So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about dinosaurs. Fair warning, I hope I don't insult anyone with this, because I'm going to talk about some legacy systems, some old systems, and saying that they're old and dinosaurs doesn't directly insult anyone here, so fair warning. So what I'm going to talk about today is what I asked ChatGPT to get me a cool title for this, and this is what it got me. It was the Taming the Tech Dinosaur, and I really like that title. And how did I overcome some of the challenges that I had, and this is with a real story that I will talk in the end. How do I migrate legacy servers or legacy systems to AWS using, and if you don't know this symbol, is the Application Migration Service on AWS. If you're curious, this little guy over here is like my mascot. It was made by my girlfriend. It's what I use on my walk. This is a little bit about me. Fabricio almost already told you about my life, but what I can tell you is my name is André Vidigal. Pleasure to meet you. I've been in IT field pretty recently, since 2017, and I'm a cloud consultant here at TechRacer, so it's pretty nice to do a presentation at home. My AWS journey actually started at around the same time, so before I did TechRacer, I never actually touched the cloud or AWS. And the last service that I worked on, not counting what I did here, but it was actually EKS, and I tried to put a Windows node on EKS. Really cool, but not really. A lot of issues. So before starting, I want to ask in the room if anyone is working or worked with legacy systems, meaning that you still have on your data centers or at your work old systems like Windows 2008, 2012, something like that, even 2003. Does anyone still work with those? Okay.
I know who does.
Me. Unfortunately, yeah. So we have some people in the room, that's nice. So a little bit of definition or what I found about legacy systems, and what I like to say is sometimes the data centers that have the systems equals a Jurassic Park. I hope there's movie fans over here. And what I found is what is considered a legacy system is that a software, can be a software or hardware, is considered a legacy system when it's not been updated or doesn't receive official support for about 5 years. This is not the most correct term, could be more, could be less, because every day new updates come and changes completely our tech world. And usually the companies that still have these systems, there's a very simple reason why, and it's a phrase that a lot of people use it, which is, if it's working, don't touch it. These systems run basically on this. The application works, the infrastructure still works, we don't need to update, so don't touch it, let's not ruin anything and explode. We'll lose our business. But this creates problems that usually these companies don't see, and I will call this the Jurassic problems. And these problems come with lack of compatibility. If for some reason the company or the product needs something new, a new software to implement, something simple as to watch logs, could be, and this can have compatibility. If the software or the operating system is from 2002, it will have issues. Then there's vulnerabilities. This is the most obvious. Since it's an old system and doesn't receive updates for 10 years, it will have vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities appears every day on the newer systems, why the older system shouldn't have. And these vulnerabilities are not fixed and will never be, probably. And the thing that many people and many companies are not aware is that having these old systems, these old legacy systems, they have more costs, because since they are not or using the most, let's say not the most, but the recent software and the recent hardware, they lose a lot of performance, compatibilities, and they are losing money as they are. And there's a lot of other problems with this. For example, not keeping up with the times and as such. So, why am I talking this? Why am I talking about dinosaurs and old legacy systems that people still use? And what I want to share you today, and I don't know if many people work with it, is what I still keeping the joke, is the AWS Amber. I don't know if anyone saw Jurassic Park. I hope someone saw it. But in the movie, the start of the movie, we have the Amber, where they extract from a mosquito from trillion millions of years ago, and they're able to recreate dinosaurs. And the idea is here is with Application Migration Service, the service from AWS to help you migrate applications and service to AWS. It's the idea that you can recreate your servers, your on-premise service, being Windows, Linux, really old. And in my case, I worked with 2003 and 2008, Windows Server, 2003 and 2008, and replicate them to AWS. In this case, I'm talking about migrating old systems to the cloud, but it's not only their purpose. The purpose for this service is to help you migrate new applications, old applications to the AWS in a very seamless way. So you can migrate a new Windows server or a new Linux server quite easily. So as I said, multi-OS support. And the really cool thing that I found about this service is while migrating the operating system, you can actually maintain your normal business operations. So while you're working on your everyday work tasks with the server, you don't need to stop your business to actually migrate to the clouds. You can keep working, and the agent that I will talk about later will keep replicating to the clouds with some caveats. So I'll talk about prerequisites, but you can actually maintain and keep what you're doing without stopping everything. Regarding costs of using the application migration service is that there's a free period of 90 days, so this is 2,000 hours, and after these periods, you actually pay around 42 cents per hour per server, so you can have multiple servers migrating, doesn't need to be one by one, and per month it could be around $30. So it's a bit expensive if you have a lot of servers, but there's actually this free period, and in my experience, in the real work case that I did, one 1.5 terabyte server took me like 1 week, so 2 weeks. So it should be enough time to actually migrate what you have using this free time. But why moving to the cloud? Why AWS? Why not just upgrade on premises? So if you have the hardware and the costs, and the space, why not? So let me try to convince you with 4 easy things. On AWS, in the clouds, let's say, you actually have more elasticity. You are able to replicate, to actually work around and destroy, create, because it's a replica. After you have this replica and recreate things that you have on the clouds with the legacy system or the system that you are migrating, you can actually upgrade it. You have space and resources to actually upgrade it. And one of the main advantages to use AWS and the clouds, it's the use of managed service. So let's say you are, for example, migrating a database, which there's another service for that, but you can also use this. You can actually move to the cloud and then migrate and modernize your database to a managed service like RDS, let's say. And after that, with managed service, you can actually convert and have more space to modernize and transform your applications, your old servers into new applications, transform your old dinosaur, let's say, into the future, into something new and actually usable. So, to work on this, there's quite some pre-requirements, and it's not as direct as I wanted to say, and there's some implications to do and some pre-work to do. So before we start digging on this dinosaur, start excavating, do some paleontology, we need to have some pre-requirements on this server, on this system. So first, and before you work on this and say, Andre, this is actually excellent, I have an old ass server that I want to migrate, can you help me? Yes, Is it supported? No. Well, don't worry, many are supported, so there's a long list from Windows Server 2003 until the newest ones, until 2022. And not only Windows, there's only a lot of Linux support. It's a little bit more ambiguous on the Linux part, so you have Oracle Linux, you have CentOS, Debian Linux, even Amazon Linux if you have on-premises server, it works, it's on their list. So be sure that it's actually support. There's a link there, but I can add a link later. And if you search, it's pretty easy. Be aware that if it's a legacy system, what they consider a legacy system, in Windows Server 2003, 2008, even I think 2012, it's still considered a legacy system on there. You will need a legacy agent. I will explain this, but there's two agents, one for normal systems, the ones that you are migrating, has more recent systems, but there's also a different agent for 2003 and 2008. Be sure that you have 4 gigabytes of free disk. I think this one is pretty easy to have, and 300 megabytes of free RAM. The agent occupies a little bit because it needs to do some operations that communicate with the API and install a few pre-recorded software. In case of legacy Windows system, you need to have .NET Framework version 3.5 and 4.5, depending on the system. So for 2003, you need the 3.5. For 2008 Windows, you need the 4.5. 2012, 4.5, and such. One thing that I found out is that if you're using older systems like Windows 2003 and 2008, so what will happen is we'll create an instance or recreate your server in an instance in AWS, an EC2 instance. And one thing that I found out is you can't actually use Nitro-based instance on these servers. Meaning that you can only, for 2003, you can only use, for example, a T2 or a T3. T1, T2. T3 is already a Nitro system, probably. So be on the lookout for that. Try to look for there's a lot of documentation for this. Try to look into this, what kind of system you're using and how old it is. And before installing any agent, on your side, on AWS side, you need to have a role, either an IAM role or a user. With this policy, it's a managed policy, meaning that it's already pre-created, you don't need to create it, just need to attach it on the role or user. And have on your network a TCP port 443 and 1500. This is because the communication for the replication is using the port 443, so it communicates on the internet using TLS. It's completely secure, and uses the port 1500 because it needs to have DNS, so it connects with the endpoint from AWS and uses that. So we have the pre-requirements, we did our study, we have our case study. In my case, I worked with 2002 and 2008. So we can start digging and do some excavation and start working. First, on AWS, what you will do, and probably the first step that most of you will do, is that you will go to Application Migration Service, and if you never worked on that account with Application Migration Service, it will take you to this window, which says that you need to do a service initialization. It needs to set up the service. You just need to click the button and creates the page for you, and you can start working. After you initialize the service, you have an option to add a server, and it will take you to this page, which is not exactly required. You don't need to do actually this. What this is that it's a let's say a recipe to help you install and start the replication agent on the source server. What happens is you select if you're using Linux or if you're using Windows. In my case, I was using Windows Legacy OS, and then I just say I'm using the IAM access key. I'm using the role or user, and I put their access key and secret access key. If you're using IAM role, it's a temporary access, so you need to set up that, and it doesn't work It works differently from the IAM user, where you get the access key and the secret access key, and then and you can use it indefinitely. Here if you use a role, it's a temporary access. You lose that access and you need to refresh it after. It depends on what you configure. But in my case, I use the user, just a user with that policy, so it doesn't have any more permissions. And then what will happen is, while you fill these options, AWS will give you a command and will fill this command. So the command starts with this, with everything empty, and after you put the access key and the secret access key, we will fill this command into your copy. So that's why you don't need to do this. It just helps you to get started. If you know the command by heart, you should go for the search server then. Yeah. So now you can work on the Dinosaur, start transforming your Dinosaur and putting it in the cloud, put some wings on it and go. And what you need to do is, here's my server. Maybe someone have good memories from this. It's a 2008. Yeah. As you can see, I already have the replication agent there that I downloaded and copied directly to the server and the .NET, and there's some data over there. So I open PowerShell and I put the command. So you can see my secret access, so don't hack my account, please. And here, after what happened, it will just say, okay, let's start installing. We'll check every disk that you have on your server. We'll start replicate, send this information to the API and say, okay, you have now an active server on AWS. When you go check on the account, you will see that you actually have their server over there, and you will start migrating. What happens on the AWS side, there's multiple steps when you start replication. So it will create a specific security group. Many of these options are changeable, so it will create a security group for you. You can create a security group for yourself, but there's recommended ports that you need to have open, like the 443 and the 1500. We'll launch the replication service. We'll create an instance for you that will start replicating, and then create the disks and start transferring the server. Depending on the size, we'll replicate, and then we have multiple testing phases. On a migration server, you have two phases, let's say. You have a test phase where, after replicating, you can actually launch a test instance to see if everything is working, if it's not. And you can say, okay, everything is good, ready for cutover. It moves to the next stage, deletes the testing instance, that's important, and then you can go to the cutover instance. If you want, you can really skip all of this, keep the test instance. If everything is okay, create an AMI and it's done. That's what I did. But you can go for all the steps, and then after you finish, you finalize the cutover and you disconnect the server, and we'll uninstall on the other side of the application and clean it like it never was there. On this process, was not all clear. Unfortunately, things can go wrong, and I would like to say that everything was perfect and it worked at the first. It didn't, but there's always hope and some coffee. So things that I found that really helped me and try to debug what happened is check your network and firewalls. So on both AWS, on the source side, check your firewalls, your network, if everything is open, the recommended ports are open. If you can communicate with the endpoint on AWS, check. You can also use VPN if necessary. So the communication is made through the public internet, but you can have a VPN and do the communication directly. In case of legacy systems like Windows, of course it's Windows, and there's always problems with drivers. And something that happened with me is that I had to install the drivers manually before replicating, so I had to work on the source server first before replicating, so it installs. And I even had to try to install it through registry, so it was a little bit of registry fun. Oh. I love that reaction. And another thing that I found out is while we were working on the server and wireless application, I told you that you can actually work on the server while replicating, but you need to look out of your read-write operations and bandwidth. If your bandwidth is smaller than actually your operations, the operations that you are doing on your server, you will get some lag and backlog. And this backlog, what happened to me, so the client's the client server was a database, and they were actually having a lot of operations like backups, replications on their source server, and the backlog got like 1 terabyte. And what happens if this backlog is way too big, the replication stops and it keeps there installing. So you need to look out, and if you have enough bandwidth to actually transfer, and try not to have too many operations on the source server. What I did to solve, and I had the luck that the source server was in a VM, so they actually just created a copy of that VM, and I worked on the copy without any rewrite operations, and then they just synchronized the data that was there. So let me tell you a bit of story. The real Jurassic adventure that I had with 2003, and a little secret that I found out. Who here in the room has ever read like H.P. Lovecraft? Any H.P. Lovecraft fans? Okay. If you know this writer, this horror writer, he always starts his stories with, I don't know how, I don't know what happened, and I think I'm getting crazy, but this happens. This is what happened to me, and if you ask me, I don't know how it happened. And we'll get there. So we had this Windows 2003, I had this Windows 2003. It finished replicating, was about 1.5 terabytes. It took a week or more. And when we started the instance was not developing. So if you know EC2, there's the 3 checks or the 2 checks, and it was having 2 out of 3 checks. Like, this is weird. Some of the documentation we'll find on the place, if you search about this, will say, wait 45 minutes until you get actually results. They're like, that's too much. 45 minutes. I waited the 45 minutes and still no luck. So I found out, and I didn't know about this, that you can actually have an instant screenshot when you go to the monitor troubleshoot and actually take an inside screenshot of the server. And what I took a screenshot, I saw on the console a screenshot, and it showed me that, okay, it's booting with weird colors, I don't know why, but it's booting. And I took there, I screenshotted like in 2 seconds. It kept booting and booting and booting, and like, what is happening? I actually, with so many screenshots, I found out that it was actually rebooting the machine because it was getting an error. The OS was not able to boot up. And I keep screenshotting and see, okay, it's actually rebooting. This was not fun. I had a lot of problems. I tried messing with the registry, installing the drivers, installing many other network drivers. Some of the documentation will say, try to create 2 network interfaces because it has some issue with the network interface. Okay, I did it, didn't work. I even called support, AWS support, we passed support. I was working this project with a friend from AWS. He was working together with me, we opened support, they passed the support to some Indian guys, the Indian team in AWS, EC2 team. No news from them until I received a funny message on WhatsApp from my colleague in AWS, my friend in AWS, saying, hey, don't ask me, but try to detach the volume, the OS volume from the instance, and do a snapshot from that volume. Okay, I did that, I created a snapshot. Then, of that snapshot, create a volume. Weird, okay, I created a volume from that snapshot. Now, from that snapshot, mount again the new volume that you created from on that OS, and it put it.
It worked?
It worked. So what you see here is the result. It's starting putting up. I was like, what? If you ask me, I don't know. I have some theories, but no one said. My friend at AWS said that he doesn't know and didn't. And I said, "How did you get there?" I said, "I just played around." Everyone that listens to this say that you're crazy. Why that shit shouldn't work? So this was my adventure with 2003 and actually worked. So if for some reason you migrate to 2003 and it's not initializing, try this. Call me if you need help. I will try to find some answers.
So just to be clear, you still don't know
Yes.
at this point.
Yeah, I didn't find out yet.
Okay.
I will try to find out answers. Guys, the EC2 team from AWS didn't find out either. Like we don't know. That isn't supposed to work. So maybe the snapshots do something. I don't know. But I want to find out too. Moving on, and almost finishing. After migrating and have your systems now ready on AWS and you have everything replicated, you have now probably two systems. So you have your own premises and the same systems on your AWS accounts. And now you have two actually normal steps. And I like to quote this from Darwin, which is, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives, it's the one that is the most adaptable to change. So this applies a lot in technology. If you adapt yourself, now that you have space to refactor and upgrade and modernize, you can adapt, you can live and outlive maybe other companies that still don't adapt. Some final thoughts for you and conclusions. It's not the perfect solution. I would like to bring you that this is the best solution ever. I found a lot of issues. It worked for me, and the documentation is a bit spread, but it works, but not the perfect. Be prepared for troubleshooting and some trial and error. Have some patience with it. If it's Windows, you're already used to it. If you already work with Windows, there's a lot of troubleshooting, and be prepared for it. On the source servers, it helped me. If you have any kind of backup snapshots that we're able to rework, like, oh no, I messed up, let's try to put back on the snapshot, like with the VM, it's perfect. It really helped me with the backlog, like I told you. And don't be afraid now that you are replicated on AWS, don't be afraid to recreate and test. Like, you have now the perfect environment to just destroy and recreate the store. You can now test without actually impacting anything. Unless you already cut over and delete everything on the other side, but I don't recommend doing that. Thank you, everyone. This is my LinkedIn. There's also my blog on my LinkedIn. I will put more details there, and if I find an answer about the snapshot thing, I will put on the blog post. But please visit, and there's also the link for my girlfriend's art stuff. She did these amazing mascots. I still haven't been finding a name. But yeah, thank you everyone. Any questions?
My question is towards the question that you actually had with setting up the environment. I was wondering, and I don't know, and please clarify me if I'm wrong, but I'm just supposing that, is it possible that maybe the whole infrastructure part of the Windows setup is like built in some sort of ephemeral source, and then this snapshot is pretty much setting up and being attached to it as a volume where all the drivers and all the corrections were kept, and then once you actually popped up something using that volume, it actually brought everything up because it was already sort of saved on as a volume?
Could be, since it was a virtual environment, could be. We tried to install like the drivers so what happens when when you try to replicate and the AWS does some kind of conversion, when you replicate the source server from the source server to AWS, it does a conversion when creating an instance. That conversion should be enough to like convert and install those drivers. We even tried to install those drivers manually, like there's a Citrix driver for old legacy systems, didn't work. Could be that the snapshot is actually trying to bring everything together, but that brings the question, like, the snapshot is performing other operations, what the snapshot is actually doing, so it brings some interesting questions, but yeah, I'm trying to find out, and yeah, soon if I have an answer. The guys in the AWS were a bit confused too. Yeah,
Alright.
thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So
Yeah.
I had like a very similar problem with a old system as well. It was like an Oracle line of 6, I think.
Yeah.
And I did the same. Like I took a snapshot from the boot follow, and after that it worked. And I just figured out that it was because of the line because of the boot mode.
Mm.
You know, it was before it was like UEFI, and after that conversion I changed it to legacy BIOS. So I'm just wondering if this
But,
would not be the problem.
Could be, but on the when you are on the application migration service, you actually have launch templates and the application settings. You can actually define there for the instances that are working what type of boot you're doing. So there's the legacy boot and the UEFI boot. I had for the legacy boot because it was old systems, and actually configured by itself, it detected it was an old system and configured automatically to legacy system. So
Okay.
could be, but on my case, I had the legacy system set up, didn't work. But thank you for the input. It's funny that someone actually did the same. If you think about it, like, why are you doing that? But hey, it's a nice experiment.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah.
Was that the hardest problem to have solved?
On the migration part, the hardest. So this was actually the first time I worked with this service. That's why I'm sharing my experiences, my first time experiences. At first, the hardest thing that I actually had to solve, and I didn't know, was actually the backlog lag thing. Like, the replication was taking a while, and we are trying to put 1.5 terabytes, transfer 1.5 terabytes to the cloud, which was not easy, and the client had limited bandwidth. And I was like, oh, it's replicating, good, awesome. In a few days, probably finished. After like 2 days, the backlog was ginormous, and it was stalling and giving an error. So I tried to find out, okay, what is happening, why is it? And then they told me, hey, we actually do like backups every day, maybe that's it. Like, okay, that's probably it. So it's a simpler issue, but to get there, it took me a lot longer than actually finding the EC2, because the EC2 snapshot thing was a lot of trial and error. So I had a troubleshooting. I had my friend at AWS working with me trying to find that issue. So I think the lesson here is don't give up. Maybe sometimes the stupidest solution is the solution. Anything else? Yeah.
It was great to hear your journey in this migration process. It's a great piece of work. My question is about the legacy systems. Still, I see some of the banks are still using old school mainframe systems. My question is, do we have any option for those application modernization, or in AWS, have you come across any such option to migrate those legacy migration mainframe application to our cloud?
For mainframes, I don't believe. So my colleagues correct me wrong. I think there's a specific mainframe.
Maybe you hand over this.
Yeah, we have a mainframe colleague here.
Yeah, we actually have a AWS mainframe modernization service that is different, and they have different providers from companies that work with mainframes. Usually companies that already have a product on the mainframe, and there are different solutions on AWS, managed solutions that you can use.
Thank you.
Let me take it.
Ready? Well, if you have migration issues or need help to migrate, contact us. Shameless plug-in. Take place and we are here. Thank you.